I'm going to call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Weber. Here. Councilor Moe. Here. Councilor Rodley. Here. Councilor Buck.
Here.
And Councilor Stout.
Here, thank you. All right, we have two items this evening. The first one is the payroll tax ordinance and council review and feedback. And I don't know who's starting. If you were, take it away.
All right.
1 second, Ethan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're here tonight looking for feedback on a proposed payroll ordinance and the associated amendments to the city's municipal code. Before we get started on that conversation, I'm going to just quickly summarize the conversations that preceded tonight's conversation. Going back to January of 2025, the mayor convened a fiscal stability task force to look at the city's general fund finances and to make recommendations for addressing the structural imbalance in the general fund. They met for 9 consecutive weeks, and out of that came a final report with 9 actionable recommendations. One of those recommendations was a payroll tax. The task force recommended a shared employer-employee payroll tax to generate approximately $2.3 million to support the general fund, evenly shared between employers and employees, simple to understand and administer, no tiered rates except for legally required exclusions, and then guardrails to ensure transparency and accountability. So previous discussions on the payroll tax in a September 2nd, 2025 work session, council reviewed a payroll tax structure. On October 27, 2025, in another work session, council reviewed a preliminary payroll tax model and its impact on our 5-year forecast. And then more recently, on December 8th, 2025, in a regular session, council adopted a resolution directing staff to develop a payroll tax ordinance for council review. And that's what brings us here this evening. The goal for tonight's work session is to review the proposed payroll tax ordinance, Exhibit A, which are the amendments from that to the city's municipal code, to talk about the administrative rules framework, and then finally to seek feedback on each of these items. Going to the payroll tax ordinance, starting with all the whereas, essentially it documents the fiscal problem and process that led to the development of a payroll tax. Getting into the therefore is where we get into kind of the meat of this payroll tax, its structure. Starting with Section 1, amends the city's municipal code as set forth in Exhibit A. I'm going to get to Exhibit A in a later slide, so I'm just going to gloss past that right now. Section 2 establishes that the payroll tax revenues will be budgeted and accounted for in a separate fund. This starts getting at the guardrails. The guardrails were a very important consideration for the task force. And the nice thing about having a separate fund is that it really allows for this transparency, allows for the public to be able to go to our budget document and our annual comprehensive financial report to gather information themselves on this program, both revenues and expenditures. Sections 3 and 4, I'm going to group together. Section 3 establishes annual reporting requirements and provides that rates will remain unchanged for the first 3 years of collection. And Section 4 requires a comprehensive review of the payroll tax beginning FY30 to assess its impact on the general fund structural imbalance and overall program effectiveness with a written report. Between the two of them, what this allows for is it allows for clarity and consistency for our business community as we implement this program. And it also gives it some time to mature some so that when we come back to you in 3 years, we'll have a better idea of the efficacy of the program, the impact that it's having on our structural imbalance. You have a question?
I do have questions, but if you're done, I can wait till you're done with the slide. If you
Well, I've just got a couple more quick comments on the slide. Section 5 authorizes the city manager to set the date of the taxes owed no sooner than January 1st, 2027. Again, this provides clarity to the business community and allows for them to plan accordingly. In looking at that January 1st, 2027, that is an ambitious date. There's a lot that needs to be done between now and then for this to be successful. We are saying it's not going to happen any sooner than January 1st, 2027. It could happen later. And as we get further into this, we'll have a better idea of what's realistic. And then sections 6 through 8 are standard legal provisions. If you have any questions on those, Mary Bridget's available to answer those. So, question.
I feel like you got this section 6 through 8 and it's like all legal provisions, off you go. That I think the place where I wanted to start with questions was really section 2 and establishing that it be budgeted and accounted for into a separate fund. And so how should I think about that in the sense of our going forward, if everything goes perfectly, is it going to be like you will have expenses in the general fund and you will have expenses in whatever this special fund is? Or is the plan to sort of transfer the money out of this fund into the general fund, and then our budget process sort of governs how we use those dollars?
So I'm going to kind of put out a concept that's sort of my recommendation, but all this can be discussed. But what I imagine doing is we'd have the revenues coming into that separate fund, and we'd have all the administrative expenses associated with managing this program also in that fund.
Okay.
And then that fund would have a reserve then that it would build as a result. Then we're doing our general fund budgeting. When we get to that point, then we're okay, do we have a deficit spend? You know, we've got our 25% floor for reserves. We would then say, okay, if we have a $1 million deficit, we will budget a transfer of $1 million from the payroll tax fund over to the general fund. With the idea being that this program could, you know, our structural imbalance, this doesn't solve it. Our major revenue source is still subject to measures 5 and 50, and we're still going to have that 3% collar issue.
Right.
So we may collect more dollars in the beginning of this program, but then as you know, that structural imbalance starts to come back, we may have those dollars to help later use. And then the other nice thing is if we budget for a transfer, we wait till we close out that fiscal year. If we have a lot of vacancies in that year, or there are things that we don't get to, if we don't have to transfer the full amount, we just transfer enough to plug that deficit spend at the end of that year.
So effectively, I know budgeting is a lot more complicated than this, but effectively what we agree upon for the general fund's budget priorities is the thing that is going to govern what is spent out of this account, right? So there's no limit to, you know, what these dollars are. You know, they're going to just be used for general sort of
Yes, there are
cost of government.
no limitations on these dollars. It essentially to support our general fund, which just covers a handful of services, the majority of them being public safety.
Yeah, so if the public wants to know what these dollars are used for, right, there's a slide you put out every year that sort of says that 70% of our expenses are essentially public safety, and then the remainder is, you know, effectively everything else.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
I do have clarification.
Sure.
So I would also I agree with I love when Nathan gives his opinion on something when we don't talk about it first, because I was gonna brace myself. Okay, what's he gonna say? But I completely concur with that process. I would also be very deliberate. If we did have to make that transfer, that we would call that out during the budget process. So just to add that extra layer of transparency for people so they know that that's happening.
Go ahead.
So we begin collecting the earliest January 1st of next year.
We would start the program on January 1st of next year. So they would be quarterly payments the way we've structured it. So we wouldn't see the first revenue most likely until April of 27 in the last quarter of fiscal year 27.
So before we would kind of get to a place where we're offsetting administrative costs and creating that deficit, how long would you anticipate it would take before that could then become an asset for the general fund if needed?
I would say that It's a good question. It's hard to answer. I'm gonna say that it's gonna become an asset immediately. It's just the impact is gonna be smaller in that first fiscal year if we meet that timeline. If there's any delay, let's say we do 6 months, we do July 1st of 2027, then we're not gonna see any support in fiscal year 27 at all. And then we'd probably see around 3/4 worth of support in fiscal year 28. For this program to truly be effective, and when we talk about that 3-year runway, before we do that formal review, is to be in place, kind of maturing. We project our compliance rate to grow as we're out there in the community educating folks. And so that's when we're really gonna get to that effectiveness, where we've got a full year of receipts and we've got a high level of compliance. But there is going to be a benefit almost immediately to have, as soon as we have this program in place and we have revenues coming in, because the revenues are gonna come in sort of proportionally to the administrative expense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Just want to make sure I'm thinking about this clearly. So would it be fair to say that as we're thinking about the budget process for the 27 budget year, really, it would be premature to really consider the payroll taxes having an impact because we don't really know. It may have some, it may get delayed. We don't really know. But in terms of for next year, probably it would be way too early to really count on anything from this. Probably 28 would be where we might see this factored into the budget process. Is that correct?
If I understand you correctly, and you know, I'm gonna get to this later in some slides.
Sorry.
Talking about, no, it's okay. We're putting the FY 27 budget together right now.
Right.
And so, and we'll be bringing that to you and you'll see later the date that'll be coming to you,
Right.
at least a preliminary look at it.
Right.
Based off of the earlier forecast that we did back in October, the deficit that we were projecting in fiscal year 27, this did not address it. We would have to find another way to address it in fiscal year 27.
Okay.
It just won't come on quick enough
Right.
to really have any substantive impact on the fiscal year 27 budget.
That's what I understood. I just wanted to make sure that I got it because there's a lot of moving parts for me still.
Would also like to add, in the work of the fiscal sustainability task force, that was kind of a point that was talked about with that group is that the way that we try to move the needle on our structural imbalance, the sooner we make decisions, whether it be, you know, diversify our revenue sources, whether it be, you know, cutting or whatever that looks like, the sooner you can try to bump that, the better of it, it will address the long-term gap. So this is gonna take some time. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think that your assessment is correct, that it will take a while to. I am not planning on being able to use anything from this in this upcoming budget deliberation. It's just too premature.
Anybody else before we keep going? I know there's a lot of questions for us to talk through. Okay.
All right, that's it for the ordinance. It's. All right, moving on to Exhibit A, the Immunity Code amendments, starting with the definitions. These are important in terms of just defining, okay, who's considered an employer? You know, what is an employee? Fixed rate, which is the wages that's applied against, the tax administrator, who is that? And then a definition of wages. And this is something we've been talking about quite a bit in terms of you know, gross wages and what's included in those wages and what's not included. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on that later. And then we get to the tax established. And I want to point out that this is actually a placeholder right now. This was the recommendation from the task force. And so we put it in as it was recommended, a rate of 0.1% payroll tax on wages paid by employers with physical presence in Springfield and wages earned by employees working for Springfield-based employers. You know, as we've been talking about this and specifically around definition of wages and what would be included in those wages, whatnot, in our research, we discovered there's a lot of unanswered questions that aren't really clear in the work that we've seen done by our peers, both City of Eugene and the state, and why they included some things and excluded others. And there's some concern that there's the possibility that there's some federal tax law that could preclude us, from excluding something or including something in those gross wages. So we don't have those answers for you this evening. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in a subject matter expert to help us address some of those questions. And then the other thing is originally I was hoping to have this conversation in January. It got bumped out to February. Here we are now in February. We've started our fiscal year 27 budget process. We closed our budgeting software last week, and our accountants are currently fund balancing, and we're close to having potentially a preliminary FY 27 budget. So recognizing that we can have updated budget information that we can then fold into a new 5-year forecast, as well as more clarification on the gross wages, we thought it was best to potentially punt out the conversation on the rate from this evening. And then when we bring this back to you, we will leave that blank, and then the conversation will happen then. And getting ahead of myself, that is scheduled for April 6th, a work session on April 6th, and I'll be talking about that again.
Councilor Mo.
We're talking about a 1% payroll tax. Do the employers also match that?
It is paid by, that 1/10 of 1% is paid by both the employer on all wages they pay and by each employee on the wages they're paid. So you could look at it as a match.
Like Social Security. Being an employee and the business also pays. So
That would-
same way as that.
Yes.
It's not very clear to businesses.
We will make it clear to businesses. Yeah, there's going to be a very large outreach and education program that comes along with implementing this payroll tax.
Other questions? Okay.
All right, and then the last bullet there requires employers to withhold and remit the employee tax portion. So in addition to their own, they'll be withholding and remit both of those taxes. All right, moving on, this establishes payment and remittance schedules. Employers shall remit payroll taxes quarterly or less frequently as established in administrative rules. And penalties and interest are going to be governed by the administrative rules as well. I'm going to be touching one of those administrative rules again later, so there's going to be some questions around those. This lays out an appeal process for the code itself. Lays out the delegation of the rulemaking authority. It's delegated to the city manager or a designee. This is going to be one of those critical items that I'm looking for feedback on this evening. I don't necessarily want you to start that conversation quite yet, and we'll just put a pin in it because I'm going to be talking about what those administrative rules contain, and I think that'll help influence your conversation. And then it also lays out a public process for adopting those administrative rules. So before moving on to administrative rules, any questions on the amendments to the municipal code?
We will get to the end, and I'm sure we will have a ton of questions and discussion.
All right. What's in the administrative rules? Again, more definitions. Some of those definitions will be similar to what are in the municipal code, but the administrative rules are actually going to include more definitions and go into a little more detail. How I see these administrative rules is the ordinance and the muni code amendments are kind of up there at 30,000 feet. You're laying out kind of the core sort of structure of this payroll tax. This gets down into sort of the programmatic minutia of how this program is going to work. So if you're an employer implementing and administering this program in your organization, you're not going to be looking to our ordinance or code. You're going to be looking to our administrative rules. And just give an example of, kind of what those look like, looking at Eugene's, their administrative rules are around 10 pages long. And when they put theirs together, they actually look to the state. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They looked to the state for kind of what was sort of best practice and industry standard and adopted those rules. Similarly for us, and we're just getting started on this process, we will also look to Eugene and the state. And the reason being is that our organizations are also paying the transit tax, and then we also have businesses that are operating in both Eugene and Springfield. So while we may choose to have a payroll tax program with a different rate and a different definition of wages that's applied against. I think it's helpful to our business community to have as much overlap and similarity as possible, so they don't have to operate off of two sets of rules. So where it makes sense, and having kind of read through theirs, ahead of time, there's nothing in there that just that is really unique in that I think you would feel differently about. So what's in there is the employer and employee tax obligations. That includes the payments schedule that they're made on, as well as the returns that accompany those payments. It includes reporting requirements for them. It lays out the audit process if we were to audit a organization, their record keeping requirements and our ability to access those records. It includes penalties. If you don't make a payment by a due date, there's a stated penalty that accompanies that. If it's not corrected within 30 days of that, then the penalty increases. So everything is just defined. Waivers, good faith waivers, there is justification sometimes to provide waivers. It defines, what is a justification for a waiver. It could be a natural disaster. It could be a fire that damages a business. So as you can read through those, it really, I think the typical person can look at those and say, yeah, those are major events that could justify a waiver. It lays out the refund process. If an employer overpays, what the process is to get that refund, as well as if an employee feels like their employer is withholding too much. It provides them a process to potentially have that reviewed and a refund issued. And then for the program itself, it lays out an ability to appeal, and then it defines our enforcement of this program itself. So we've kind of gone from that 30,000 feet, we're right down into the minutia. And that's essentially what I think comprises the administrative rules and gets from kind of council guidance into more sort of operational day-to-day city manager responsibility. And that brings us back to that question, delegation of the rulemaking authority to the city manager or designee. I'm going to pause there.
Okay, so you're effectively asking for a head nod to say we're going to delegate all administrative rulemaking to the city manager, and that's something that's fairly common.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have questions about that? I don't think we're concerned about that at all, right? And we understand that there's going to be a lot of administrative rulemaking around this to make this work and make it effective. So I think we are good.
Okay. And then again, there's a public process that is going to allow for public input into those rules as well. So before we get to next steps, I wanted to come back to guardrails. Again, it was a very important consideration of the task force. And so we've heard that, and we built those guardrails into this program. The rates established by council adopted ordinance. For that rate to change, then it would have to come back to council and be changed through an ordinance. No rate increases or structural changes for 3 years. Required annual reporting to council and public. What that annual reporting will look like is as part of our regular kickoff of the budget process when we bring you a 5-year forecast in the fall. By that point, we've always closed out the previous year financials, and so we'll include a component that'll talk about the performance of the payroll tax program and its impact that it's having on that 5-year forecast. Revenues budgeted and accounted for in a separate fund. I spoke to that earlier. It allows for transparency and ease for the public to access this information on their own without an information request. And then a formal program review after year 3 that allows time for this program to mature and for us to have a time frame where we can really assess the impact that it's having on the city's financials.
So 2 questions about the guardrails. The first is when we say no rate increases or structural changes for 3 years, right? Does that preclude if something is fundamentally broken about whatever is happening, right? If everybody looks around and says we can't wait 3 years, we got to change something, we still can act upon that. Yes,
I'm going to let you answer that and see if you're.
Sure. Well, part of that is how we structure the ordinance itself. And so I would, obviously consult with the city attorney on that, because I think that's a good point, Mayor. If if there's some of that legal language that Nathan alluded to earlier covers some of that, like if, let's say we find out, oh, according to the Oregon Constitution, we can't do this, so things like that where we do need to have the opportunity to revisit if it's not meeting certain legal thresholds. So we'll make sure that we look at how we really formalize that no change for 3-year process so that we do have a little bit more leeway for the council. So maybe that's something that we talk about when we get to really finalizing that ordinance with the rate and all of that, and really tie it all up together. So I would want to talk to the city attorney's office a little bit more about that before I offer a solution.
Yeah, okay, good. I think it's reasonable for the public to ask us not to make changes for 3 years, but also we need to figure out about, like, even if we have to assert, to disentangle that to allow us to change it, we shouldn't sort of have something that everybody agrees is not working for effectively a constraint that we put on ourselves.
And also you can't abide the decisions of a future governing body. So we got to make sure that we're right on that one as well.
The second question that I have, and I think this is a clarity point for the public, when we say formal program review, I've always understood that to mean we're going to pull back and have a community conversation about what is happening and and how this thing's performing. That doesn't mean that we are saying that the council has to reauthorize it at 3 years, right? That is saying that we are going to talk about how it's performing and what do we want to do as a community.
Mayor, that is correct. I think that it's more about, is the program doing what it was intended to do? Are those guardrails really meaningful for what the task force discussed? And when the task force was discussing this, there was not the concept that, okay, after year 3, if we don't like it, we're just going to eliminate it, because I think that they recognize the importance of the diversification of this revenue source. But, a lot of this is built on how our economy is doing as well, so it may very well be, and I hope that this isn't the case, but if the economy had a significant downturn, it may impact these numbers. So you always want things to go well, but it is not always the case.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else have other questions? I think we're ready to keep going.
All right, next steps. So we've scheduled a work session for April 6th. We will have a preliminary fiscal year 27 budget and built into the 5-year forecast with the impact of the task force recommendations, including the payroll tax, layered into that. We should have clarity from a subject matter expert in terms of how we're going to structure our gross wages and what's included and what's excluded. That'll allow us to also update the revenue. So, and just to kind of go back there, is our original, if we kind of follow the same definition of wages that both the state uses for the transit tax and Eugene, we were looking at generating revenue around 2.4 million. If we went to just pure gross wages with no exclusions, except for the minimum ones that are clearly, kind of outlined in Oregon statute, we were looking at generating 2.9 million. We're now kind of thinking that it might be somewhere in between there, but we'll have clarity on what that is, and then that will be layered into that 5-year forecast, and that'll help. And then I also hope by that date maybe to have a better idea of when we envision to, a realistic date for when we can implement this program and when it will start impacting our how it layers into the 5-year forecast.
So point of clarification, at this point, there may be things that we're in that scenario where we don't know what we don't know yet. Just this final little point before we get to the finish line. So there may be provisions where we're not able to tax certain people or entities, or, we could build in assumptions about, well, maybe another government agency would participate, but they don't have to. So those are some of the decisions that are beyond the scope of our control. So with respect to when we put out numbers, I want to be clear that these are just really projection numbers. And I, especially for the first year of implementation, would want to be on the very conservative end of this for our projecting purposes, because we know that we are not going to have a full year coming in. And so, and also we're going to be refining things. Hopefully, we'll get better rate of return as this program moves forward. But the first year is going to be, as with this beginning of any new program, you're not going to realize its full potential.
Councilor Weber, and then we'll go to Councilor Stout.
Just a comment to that point and the one you made earlier. I mean, this is always going to be fluctuating,
Right.
right? We're never from one year to the next going to know what employment looks like, right? How many are employed in the city, how many businesses open or close or stay the same.
Right.
So I think we have to keep reminding ourselves that that whatever we project can change, very quickly.
Yes, I think that's an important distinction. This council and this community is very business friendly. We put a real emphasis on economic development. This is super important to us, but a lot of things are simply out of the scope of our control when it comes to an individual business and their ability to operate.
Councilor Stout.
So, and not trying to be dense, but I know we're obviously looking at clarifications, that sort of thing. So when will we be looking at setting final rate? On the 6th?
On April 6th. And so we will also schedule for that same evening in the regular session, public hearing and first reading. We will leave the rate blank, and then if you arrive at a rate on that evening, then we'll proceed into the regular session with the first hearing where we'll insert that recommended rate.
Okay.
So I guess a point of clarification here, on the 6th, what we will be looking at is the 5-year forecast that you use to build the budget off of, right?
We'll be looking at the preliminary fiscal year 27 budget, and then we'll take that as the foundation for extrapolating the 5-year forecast, yes.
Okay. So I think there's a couple elements that, this is a place where we have to sort of like slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Is getting everybody to the right set of information and understanding what we're budgeting off of and why, and the commentary around it's going to become really important. So if I think about next year's budget, and I'm just listening to the description that both of you have had, it sounds like we should expect that we may be deficit spending to bridge from the point that we are today to the point that the payroll tax sort of kicks in. Is that fair?
That's what we expect, yes.
Okay, other questions?
Sorry, just one more comment. In your rulemaking process, when will you be actively discussing with acting chief financial folks, bookkeepers, that sort of thing, because that's such a crucial part of compliance. At what point are you going to have live conversations with a real human being in their chairs operating QuickBooks? I'm just curious, when is that coming up in your process?
We've already had
Okay, got
some feedback and some preliminary conversations with especially some of the payroll companies that, that a lot of businesses historically, like ADP, those type of businesses, but we also want to talk to our business community. And I think that the Chamber of Commerce could be potentially a very helpful partner in this, and really getting in front of our business community and really having the people that are actually, they bring in their finance people, not necessarily the CEO, but the people that are actually doing that work. And, we're really seeking to make this as simple as possible, knowing that we're talking about taxes, there is an element of complexity to it, but we're not trying to, we're going to do this in the least complicated way as possible. That's been our commitment.
Okay. Anybody else? So the 6th would be the date we solve the rate. And then if you were in the question around library funding would get sort of settled when your proposed budget becomes published, if you will.
Sure. Well, I want to talk, if I
Sure.
may, talk a little bit about the budget process itself, because I think it'd be helpful for the community at large. So generally in the process, we close out the prior fiscal year, see how those numbers come in. You always have a little bit of fluctuation in your departmental budget. Sometimes you don't spend out, like you might have some vacancies or things like that, or you might have an unexpected expenditure that is mission critical. Like a good example would be like protective equipment or public safety or public works. So you look at all of those and then you start your projections on where revenue may be coming in based on, we look at a number of factors based on, history, the constraints of the Oregon tax law, but also we look at, what is the development that we have. I mean, Nathan and I have been working on this for years to really refine it to as close to real time as we can get. Then Nathan, myself, and Neil, also Jessica Mummy, we meet with every single department in the city and we talk about their individual needs. We give them a certain percentage on what they can spend for materials and services. And then we talk about, their individual departmental needs. And then basically the sausage gets made, so to speak, by comparing what those needs are and how mission critical they are. So, we look at, are there federal requirements that we have to meet or state requirements that have to meet that has an expense attached to it that we have to pay? So there's like mandated expenses, there are mission critical expenses, and we have to balance all those within the total breadth of the city and what our community expects and the level of services they expect from us. And so from there, we propose a budget. We have to balance the budget. Unlike the federal government, we are required to submit a balanced budget. And so we do that and we bring that to the budget committee as the first step in the budget process. They have the opportunity to make comment on that budget, to review it. We have discussions about it. There's a public process about that. And then it, based on that work, hopefully they arrive at a budget that they, endorse to go forward to the council. And then you have another crack at it. And the public also has another crack at it to look at it, to talk about it. Frankly, my job is to get you a budget that is as close to baked as possible. And I know that some people could feel like, well, aren't we just rubber stamping what the city manager wants? And that's not really the case. Oregon law requires that we have people look at the work of government and make sure that that work is sound. It's a check and balance type of system that is unique to us. So it's really about keeping our community involved. My directive is really based on what you as the council has determined for your priorities based on the community and what the community needs and wants. So all of those things have to be balanced against each other. And then we make decisions on that. Is it interesting work? Yes. Is it fun? It can be. Does it suck? A lot of times it does. So, that's just kind of a snapshot of how the budget process works in Oregon.
Okay, other questions? I think the big thing that we should be wrapping our heads around is that you're consistently indicating over that we are going to see some sort of cuts.
Yes.
That is not necessarily specific around the library. That is just a general commentary about the state of the city's finances. The other thing where I think is really important, and maybe you can provide some line of sight to it, is I don't think you should be bound by exactly the letter of the law, the letter of the rules, the report, right? Like, I think you should propose a budget that makes the most amount of sense evaluating everything, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not held up on, like, if you come back and say the best reductions look like it's $200,000 from one bucket and $300,000 from a different bucket, whether or not that includes the library or not. I don't feel like you should be bound by exactly what the report says. More, give yourself as much flexibility as possible to evaluate all the services that we have and propose a budget that makes the most sense for the most amount of people.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Also, we look at this budget all the time. And, even down to the level of if there are changes in personnel within the city, if somebody retires or if somebody is requesting a new position, even if we're refilling an existing position, I have an internal group that we review every single one of them, and we question it. We ask, does this need to happen? Can it be done differently? Can it be done less expensively? Is this mission critical? We do that now. So there are a lot of touches that happen on this budget throughout the year, in addition to the budget process.
Councilor Rodley.
Yeah, and I appreciate you calling that out, because when you say report, you're talking about from the fiscal task force report, right? So I just wanted to clarify that. And I know I say this every year, and I'll probably say it 7 more times till people get cranky at me, but a budget is a a plan and not a promise. And I think particularly in 27 and probably 28, I think it's gonna be a really challenging budgeting year, which I don't have to tell you all. Years, so I think the more flexibility we have to get to the intent of what came out of that work group, the better. I love that we're starting with the revenue conversations before we get to the cut conversations, because I think I think that it will come as no surprise to people that we have to look for ways to pull in while we wait to see what's going on and how things are impacted. And I've been spending a lot of time in conversations with folks and trying to weigh, just the cost of living and livability concerns with the fact that we also need to continue to move forward, which makes it a particularly challenging time. And I appreciate, as always, the careful process that we in Springfield are taking for this. And I just, as I've been following along tonight, I was thinking, well, this is why we made Nate and Jessica employees of the year, because they're so careful and they come at it with such a Springfield lens. And we've been taking a lot of time to talk it through and give the community an opportunity to give feedback as we do that. So appreciation and just acknowledging that I understand it's what we're gonna be, trying to bring order to chaos for.
I think that's an important point, Counselor, and it really, all it takes is one large event, to really throw off your budget. A global pandemic, the holiday farm fire, these are things that you cannot plan for and still have a budgetary impact. And yes, you can get, in some amount of reimbursement on an emergency declaration, but you still have those immediate costs that happen. The ice storm is probably the most recent example. So, you're right. A budget is a plan that reflects what the priorities are of this council and the policies that you set for me. My job is to have ownership over that budget and work with Nathan and Jessica to present that to the budget committee and go through the legal processes to adopt it and levy the taxes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Did you get everything you needed?
Yeah, so really quickly, then, if we're able to decide on a rate on April 6th, we've also scheduled the April 20th regular session. Final reading.
And that would basically lock us right into the budget in early May.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Could I ask a question about the rate conversation process? Are you going to bring us a couple of examples? Like, we'll have the 0.1 of 10%, but if there's interest or folks are like, what if it look like 0.2 of 10%, or what if it 0.1 look 5? Will you bring us some math?
Yeah, so similarly to what we've done before with that is we'll show the 0.1 and then we'll show what each 0.01 looks like. And that, just, it's an easy increment to just multiply out.
Great, thanks.
So what I'm hearing then this evening is, the framework that we've looked at, you're comfortable with the ordinance and muni code amendments. You're comfortable with delegating the rulemaking authority to the city manager or a designee. And then we've held off on the conversation on the rate, and that's going to happen on April 6th.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and I am also, I guess, in favor, or if we want to write down what the plan here is to get through, there's a lot of community interest around this conversation right now. And I know we communicate to the public in all sorts of different ways. So if we want to just say, hey, here's the plan at one point, or so give some sort of artifact for people to look at, I think that would be really helpful.
Are you referring to this issue in general, specifically, or the budget process in general?
I mean, this issue specifically, right? That the 6th, we're going to talk about the rate, right? We are here. We have to go through these 3 steps. We're going to have the hearings on this date. We're going to talk about the budget. We're going to talk about the budget at this date. It's right now, this is really complicated and there's a lot of interest. Anything we can do to keep people on the correct set of facts as far as the timeline goes, I'm sure they will appreciate.
Speak to our public information officer.
Yes.
She has some free time now that State of the City is doing.
All right, I think we're good. Thank you. All right, our second item is the Housing and Design Initiative, the code and plan update. with Lily Campbell. I think you have your templates.
Good job, team.
Okay, just wanted to make sure it worked. No whammies tonight. Me, mayor and council, I'm grateful to be back here tonight. You may remember over fall and winter, I came to you 4 times. Hopefully this is the last policy discussion we have on this topic, before we get to the adoption process. Yes, Mayor. Hold on, come on. So tonight there's a few items in your council packet. Hopefully you had a chance to read that and review that. And I'm here for the questions and the discussion. So I just want to go over the recommendations about basically what this project is about. So back in December, we touched on 4 recommendations that came from our consultant, how we could increase affordability, production, and choice for housing in Springfield. Those 4 recommendations were to allow housing in our mixed-use development areas, then provide more flexibility for size and location of commercial space in a mixed-use development, allow multi-unit standalone residential development in more locations, primarily our community commercial district, and then encourage more high-density housing in more locations. So this table is great. This is a summary of basically what these recommendations look like. So for the first area, the mixed-use development in more locations, this includes all sites less than 1 acre on Main Street and South A Street. Our CFA sites, so downtown and Mohawk, and then in the neighborhood commercial district, we are also allowing that as a mixed-use development area or location. To lessen the economic barriers to mixed-use development, we're providing more flexibility for the size and location of commercial space in a mixed-use development. This looks like reducing the total amount of commercial space required in a mixed-use development. So sometimes that could be 60%, 30%, et cetera, et cetera. And we're allowing separate mixed-use developments. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a mixed-use building. It could be a horizontal mixed-use site. So you could have commercial fronting the main street and residential behind. We'll provide more opportunities for multi-unit housing in standalone and more locations. Again, that's on properties under 1 acre on local and collector streets off of Main Street or South A Street. And a CFA overlay for mixed-use commercial lots that are not fronting arterials. So again, Main Street, South A, things like that. And all mixed-use employment and mixed-use residential lots. And I just want to point out that the CFA area will also allow townhomes. Then we are also encouraging high-density housing. So again, touching on, there's 4 main topics right there. We're going to apply a minimum density standard to all districts where we would allow housing. We're going to modify the height step down. So that could be like, we used to have a 50-foot setback. Now we're having a 25-foot setback from abutting low-density residential properties. We'll allow greater lot coverage, and then we'll allow up to 4-story buildings in the neighborhood commercial district. That's because, again, we're allowing it as a mixed-use development. Okay, so the first policy discussion tonight is about Booth Kelly. So I just kind of want to touch about the history of Booth Kelly a little bit. There's a lot to unpack here, but it's vitally important. In 1985, we received the mill race land. That was a donation from Georgia Pacific. And in 1986, we adopted the Springfield Downtown Refinement Plan and Article 19 of the Springfield Development Code. In the code and the refinement plan, we required a conceptual development plan. And I will get into a little bit more about what that is, what that requires in the next slides. In 1989, we actually adopted the conceptual development plan. That has been the only conceptual development plan then or now. It included proposed uses, common design features, findings which showed conformance with the refinement plan and the code and the refinement plan at the time. And that's actually in your council packet if you were looking for it. In 2005, we amended the refinement plan as the city was awarded a grant to improve the mill race. That was from the Army Corps of Engineers. And again, those policies that were added to the refinement plan were mostly about restoring native vegetation, improving public access to the mill race, et cetera. From 2013 to 2015, we did a huge amount of engagement, and that resulted in the Main Street Corridor Vision Plan. Within that, we envisioned Booth Kelly mixed use as a mixed use employment district. That plan obviously didn't come to fruition, but it was how we envisioned Main Street to look. And then finally, I want to touch about from 2017, so 7 years, we worked on restoration of the mill race. So I want to talk about basically the planning process in Booth Kelly. As you can see in that little diagram, it's kind of complex. First, you have the conceptual development plan, then you have the development area plan, and then you have the site plan. So for a conceptual development plan, major redevelopment or new construction must be consistent with the conceptual development plan. Again, I mentioned that was written in 1989. It must be consistent with the comprehensive plan, the downtown refinement plan, and other applicable plans. So I mentioned that if that was written in 1989 and we amended the refinement plan in 2005, we haven't made any amendments to that conceptual development plan that was written again in 1989. Should it need to be amended or we want to amend it, it must be developed with the city and the developer after consulting with heavy industrial properties that are adjacent to the Booth Kelly mixed use district. For the development area plan, so this is the next step in the process, you start with your overall plan of the district, then you break it down by development areas within the district. The minimum area is 10 acres. The 10 acres do not apply to parcels fronting on South A or the minor expansion of existing structures on existing lots. The development area plan is an extra step in the process. It may only be reduced when the director determines that minimum area, that the proposal in all other respects is consistent with the code, the refinement plan, and the conceptual development plan. And it's got to be prepared by a design team. So this is a barrier, what we have determined. Again, you have to have that conceptual development plan first. You have to have that minimum development area of 10 acres. And then after you have your development area of 10 acres, then you can go through the site plan review process. So it's a complex process overall, and we really haven't updated it since 2005 and so forth. So some immediate changes as part of this project. It's all laid out in the council briefing memo, but summarizing it here on the screen, this is complex. So again, if you guys have additional questions, I'm here to talk about them. So you may recall that the first thing or the last couple of things we've been talking about at the previous work sessions were about rezoning the Booth Kelly development area to be the mixed use employment district. This would apply to Booth Kelly and the mixed use light medium industrial community commercial district that's in Gateway. We would amend the refinement plan language to say that the development area is implemented through the mixed use employment district, but we would not take it away from the comprehensive plan. It would still be the Booth Kelly mixed use district in the comprehensive plan map. Then the next part is about the conceptual development area plan. So instead of keeping the conceptual development area plan, which again is only required in the Booth Kelly district or the campus industrial district, we would either allow a phased development plan or master plan and or a site plan review application. So the phased development plan would be if the application or development is proposed to happen for less than 3 years, and a master plan if it is proposed to happen over a longer period to exceed 3 years. So under 3 years phased development, over 3 years master plan. If it's a minor improvement, then we would consider a site plan review application. Again, these are outlined in the policies in your packet. Then there were a few policies that we decided to leave alone, 2A, 2B, 2F, and 2G. But then we were looking at some of the compatibility and operational issues, concerns that are addressed in the policies. That's 4A and 2C, mostly about putting industrial in close proximity to residential, in close proximity to recreational facilities, things like that. So we are proposing to move some of the policies that are in 4 to 2 and consolidate. Basically, the policies in 4 were completed in 2017 because it was when they did the refinement plan update in 2005, they added policies to 4, and that was for the Mill Race Ecosystem Restoration Project, which again was completed in 2017. So there are some policies that are still applicable. They could be like increasing recreational access or making sure that we're still improving native restoration, we're still addressing stormwater facilities, things like that. Those things that are still applicable would be moved to 2, and we would essentially get rid of policy 4 because it's no longer applicable. So I just want to make sure that council is okay with this first policy question. Do you support the following proposal? So again, the first thing that we would do is we would rezone the Booth Kelly Mixed Use District to mixed use employment. We would replace the conceptual development plan and development area plan requirements with a phase development plan / master plan or site plan review process, depending on the scale and phasing of the project. And then again, the last part, which I just kind of went over, was removing or updating the policies that are no longer applicable following the completion of the Mill Race project in 2017.
Counselor Rodley.
Thank you as always for sticking with us through this. I'm not entirely convinced. It sounds like it's getting simpler, but I'm gonna trust that maybe it is. My question, and when I read through it before, and I'm still reading through it, or I'm listening to you explain it, are we being as flexible as we possibly can? Or are we just grouping and replacing things that we did before? I mean, I'm serious in that. I know I've said this before, and I'm just gonna keep saying it. I really do want to come out of this having simplified it and made it much easier for people to develop in all the ways, in all the places. And so I'm just curious as to, did we get rid of everything we could? Or did we be like, maybe we should keep a little bit of this or a little bit of that to get as flexible as we possibly can?
Yeah, I think, one of the issues here is that you can't really get rid of the application process altogether, especially if you have a conceptual development plan. We still want and need to show compliance with the refinement plan, with the intent of what we imagine the Booth Kelly Mixed Use District to be, the downtown vision, things like that. So we needed an application that was close to the conceptual development plan without maybe creating a new plan altogether. So we were acknowledging that Booth Kelly is a huge district and there's a lot of potential to develop however we want to. And that is probably going to require some overall vision plan. And that is usually covered in a master plan or phase development plan. We also already have a phase development plan application for our mixed use districts that already exists in our code. So if we're rezoning to mixed use employment, it's kind of already covered. It already exists. We just don't have that now because the property is zoned Booth Kelly mixed use. So it is really, really simplifying and basically going back to potentially what the original intent was here, is to envision what we wanted. And to make it simple, depending on the type of application, depending on if you are envisioning long-term or if you just want to make some minor improvements.
Counselor Stout.
I really appreciate your approach to this. This is fun. My question is on transitioning from the Booth Kelly to a mixed use employment district is only scary if I'm feeling like, oh, are we taking away heavy industrial land for the purpose of, something else? I just want to make sure that in that transition, you're telling me this is going to simplify it and make it more likely for a heavy industrial user, because Booth Kelly was heavy industrial property, to be able to come and reoccupy, redevelop, and reinvest. And then since most of our heavy industry is paying our property taxes, I want to, incentivize that. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, we still carried over that use. So even if we rezoned to mixed use employment, it'll still allow that heavy industrial production. We talked about that at the previous.
I just want to make sure that that's.
Absolutely, didn't change it, still staying. Yep.
You want to put back to the policy questions? So I think I'm good with this list. It sounds way more complicated than it actually probably is. And so I think the feedback I have is if we just have to find a way to sort of package this as a way that it's simpler, because it sounds more complicated.
Yeah, I think it's complicated because we just haven't looked at this in a really long time, right? And so going back to what the process looks like now, right? Most of the time, for most, it's just a site plan review application. Unless you're planning a long-term vision, then you do the master plan process, usually. So to create this new development area plan, most of the time we don't have that application. We don't know what that looks like. We also just have a conceptual development plan required in Booth Kelly or the Campus Industrial District. So you're creating applications and processes that we just don't see. So I think that's what creates the kind of confusion, and this is really technical. It just needs an update.
So I think we're good with this. We're good with this? Okay.
All right, some compatibility discussion. So again, back in December, you guys requested some additional information on compatibility issues between industrial and residential uses. There's a few areas where this really applies. Again, downtown, we just talked about Booth Kelly, the Gateway Refinement Plan, that mixed use LMICC district. And then there are some other areas in Mid Springfield and East Maine, which we consider kind of to be mixed use areas. Again, the key concerns that we heard were about noise impacts between community livability and livelihoods, building design. Does that actually impact noise levels? And then other operational impacts like air pollution, vibration, things like that. So the research, what does the research say? I love this graphic because it shows basically that it is about the design of the buildings on a site. And the graphics are essentially showing the noise levels. A more enclosed building kind of reduces that noise. It kind of bounces it off versus where you have more open space, you're going to have more of those noise impacts. So the studies basically show that form and building acoustics find that noise exposure is shaped, again, by how buildings are arranged relative to the noise sources and by the presence of intermediary spaces. So again, those common open space areas. Enclosed and semi-enclosed building forms, particularly at mid-rise heights, so again, that 40 to 80 feet, consistently demonstrate improved acoustical performances. So this kind of piggybacks on the topic of commercial or light medium industrial buildings positioned between the noise sources. So if we had a mixed use horizontal site, the commercial in the front, residential behind, that's kind of going to act as that buffer between maybe a large industrial site or a noisy road, things like that, that is buffering that potential residential use from that loud noise. So together, the research shows that compatibility is more often achieved through site planning and building placement rather than separation of uses, right? Those enclosed buildings versus the more gap and open space.
So could you go back to the one more to the. Okay, so I think my question, and this is really up around Q and Shelley, right, where we really see those. It's the road, like if you're pushing industrial back, and I know you're going to get into this from a design perspective, right? In this case, which is probably the area that I've got the most experience with, you're essentially pushing the noise sources towards the houses, right? So I think the question that I have, and as you get into it, is how do we sort of balance the fact that, right, like it's not about trying to push the noise back, right? It's about, in certain cases, based on how the city's designed, it's about sort of trying to pull the noise forward, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's really going to depend on all of it kind of works together is basically what the research shows, right? It's about building form, it's about vegetation, it's about berms that reduce that noise. It's everything kind of works together. Okay, so talking about height standard, should a maximum height standard apply where mixed use development with residential uses abut an industrial district or not? If you're not concerned about height, should an alternative design or operational standards be prioritized? And we can get into that in the next question. But I do want to touch on, basically this showed, again, that 40 to 80 feet tall is kind of your sweet spot for height. And then it's also, the key is how's the building designed? Any thoughts, questions?
So 80 feet would be 4 stories, is that correct?
6, 7, 80 feet. Yeah, I'd say like 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Haley, can you go back one slide and just, for those that may be watching this later, can you talk a little bit about the heat map and what that represents for those that may not have your local expertise?
Yes, so the vertical noise map is a great example, basically showing like the colors are representing the noise, how noise is kind of bouncing off. So you can see the red, it's bouncing off from 1 because of the shape of the building that it's really enclosed. And so the noise is just kind of hitting off the edges of the building as opposed to that open space where it could kind of travel through. And we'll see on a couple more slides, basically they call that the shadow zone, where either the noise is going over or bouncing off the building as opposed to going through the site. That's kind of what you're seeing through 5 and 10, those orange or redder numbers where you can just see that the noise is kind of just traveling into the site as opposed to going.
And just to be clear, the red is the lower levels and the green is the higher levels.
The green is the lower levels, the red is the higher levels.
I'm so sorry, only because my background, I just see of your DBA in the thing, it's like -0 versus, we keep going for, oh, I see it, okay.
More
I have
noisy.
it- I have it reversed in my mind, thank you,
Yes.
thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's see question 2 first.
Yes, we can skip ahead to question 2. So I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail here, but this is about proximity to industrial, again, those compatibility standards. So again, there were questions about livability and residential and proximity to industrial. So again, this image is great because it's showing that shadow zone. It's showing basically how the noise is either vibrating or moving away from a buffer, vegetation, what is kind of buffering that noise. And you can see at the top where there's no buffer, right? Usually the noise is coming straight through to the residential development versus if you put a berm, if you put a wall, that shadow zone is giving that example of how noise is traveling to a site with and without buffers, essentially. So the research shows that landscape setbacks, rows of trees and shrubs, earthen berms and solid walls or fences all contribute to lower noise levels. Buffers that combine multiple elements. So again, vegetation paired with a wall or a berm perform better than distance alone. So it's not just about how far is the industrial use from the residential use, it's do you have something to buffer, screen the uses. Street facing green buffers can provide measurable traffic noise reduction. For example, they gave some really technical information here, but mixed conifer trees with shrub undergrowth heights ranging from 1.5 feet to 13 feet showed noise reductions commonly ranging from 3 to 10 decibels, and usually you don't want to be above 50 decibels. Depending on the distance and planting layout with structured and continuous planting patterns outperforming irregular designs. So basically meaning you need a lot of trees and a lot of shrubs planted together to reduce that noise. And when there's gaps, it doesn't perform as well. And then residential and proximity to industrial. So again, this is a big question, especially in Booth Kelly mixed use in the Q Street, Laura Street area. The studies consistently find that activities such as small workshops, repair services, artisan manufacturing, and live workspaces generate lower noise levels, fewer emissions, and less heavy truck traffic than general or heavy industrial production, right? But why is that the case? When light industrial uses are located on the ground floor of a mixed-use building with housing above or adjacent, the impacts can be managed through clear operational limits. So this could be a shared loading area, separation of residential and industrial entrances from work and delivery zones, things like that. Operating hours, delivery activities are regulated. So it's saying that you can allow the uses together, but just consider how all of these uses work together. Then I want to talk about some of the policies that we already have in our refinement plans. So again, I was talking about downtown, Gateway, Mid-Springfield, and East Main. We have already tried to address compatibility where we felt it was appropriate. So in the downtown area, we have design and development features that promote compatibility and a transition to adjacent uses. In the Booth Kelly area, again, that conceptual development plan was intended to recognize that heavy industrial uses will continue on adjacent properties, and we need to address compatibility through the conceptual development plan. And Gateway, again, the Q Street, Laura Street area, the policy literally says that we shall minimize lighting, noise, olfactory, and visual impacts from industrial commercial development on adjacent residential. We'll retain existing trees in the setbacks and will enforce those screening and buffering requirements. In Mid-Springfield, they wanted to eliminate the mixed-use plan designations because they found that this could create conflicts between industrial, commercial, and residential, except in one nodal development area, which was, if we have time, I'll get into it. And then in the East Main area, where it's heavy industrial abuts residential, they require a 20-foot wide buffer with, again, vegetative screening that's required, and the trigger is when new or expanding industrial uses come within 100 feet of a residential district. So these are the policies we have in place now, but sometimes we find that they are not actually put into our development code, and our development code actually is the regulator that points to this is what's going to happen if you don't comply with these standards. So to address this, we've found that we are missing some things in our code and we could propose some changes. So the first is to create some operational compatibility standards for the mixed-use employment district. Our campus industrial district is the only district where we have these similar standards. But again, we could look at air pollution, noise, groundwater protection, et cetera, and apply some of those standards to our mixed-use employment district. Any district basically where you're mixing that industrial, commercial, and residential in close proximity to each other. We can also, in our mixed-use districts, add those screening and buffering standards. This will include screening and buffering between parking, garbage and recycling areas, ground-mounted utility equipment. We can prohibit garbages and recycling areas and front yard setbacks when you're abutting residential. And then if we choose not to add the operational and compatibility standards, so if we choose not to regulate so much noise, smells, air pollution in the first option, we could just regulate noise. So in our existing code, in our mixed-use districts, it says that noise shall not exceed 50 decibels as measured at the property line within a residential district. So again, that 50 decibels is usually that cutoff for we don't want a lot of noise bouncing off of industrial properties and impacting those residential properties that are abutting an industrial property. Then in Mid-Springfield and East Main, these are our commercial districts. We can add a setback requirement. So the proposal is to add a 20-foot setback requirement when a mixed-use development with residential uses or multi-unit housing is abutting a light, medium industrial, heavy industrial, or special heavy industrial district. And the setback can be reduced to 10 feet if you install a masonry wall, decorative wall. And then again, we're going to have that screening and landscaping. We're going to hit two birds with one stone because again, the research shows that it can't just be a wall. It has to be a wall and vegetation to screen and buffer those uses from each other. So this gets to how can we address some of these livability standards? So again, the first question was, we could just regulate for height, or we can acknowledge that we think that there are additional standards that we need to mitigate against, especially for putting industrial, commercial in close proximity to residential. So here, I showed you some of the proposed code amendments. That's the first thing that we could do. If we don't want to do that, we could address compatibility and operational performance standards at another time. I can flag that we have this concern and we can address it at another time through another project, whatever. More research can be done, basically what that could look like. And then again, the last option could just be to not allow residential uses near industrial uses.
So I got a question and then we'll open it up and get into it. So I think the design standards are sort of like I'm building something new and the residential is already there. What if it is the reverse, which is like our industrial centers in the city are significantly older than residential? And I think when I've been thinking about this problem, I've been thinking about it kind of in reverse, right? The mill's already there, right? Now we've added housing to it. So would the 50 decibel standard be sort of like the next time that if they don't meet it, then the person that's already there, has been there for a long time, is going to be required to change something?
I think the trigger would be, are they proposing a new use on the site? So if there was no new use proposed, they were continuing the existing use, then we would not apply those standards. It's going to come in if the industrial use comes in and asks for a new development on the site that could cause changes.
So let's open it up to folks. Go ahead, Councilor Riley.
Okay. I think this is where I'm landing with this. I think I am not in favor of like height restrictions. And keeping that fluid. I also, could you go back a slide? I also think that I am not in favor of all of those things. All of those standards and prohibitions. So I think you mentioned something about, could we just start with noise, right? Because I do think that, if I was trying to do something and I've got to figure out where's the garbage gonna go and where's the this and where's that, I think some of that can be determined by like the market in the neighborhood. And we may come back and need to as we get denser, but I don't think that's gonna happen next year. So that's where I'm like, I don't think I want to limit height, because I think that there's been enough market pressure that's kept us from building 12 stories or whatever. So, and by focusing on the noise, because that was a thing, particularly like in the gateway area and places that people have brought up. I think that's where I'm at. Like all of these other things, these standards and regulations, I'd rather not lean in hard to.
Okay, Counselor Buck.
Yeah, just kind of a few, and I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here. I'm definitely in agreement with Councilor Radley on, I think restricting height, may not be a restriction we wanna go down that road and just kind of let kind of the natural course of how things go, kind of dictate that. And part of the reason for that is as we start thinking about our earlier conversation with, budgetary and tax base and all of that, economic development is so important to that. And any brakes we put on those, I would be hesitant to. So I almost would rather let developers kind of figure the height piece out. And then when it comes to some of the other barriers and all of this, I mean, I definitely, we haven't done anything with this for a long time. So trying to come and fix everything all at once feels like a lot. And it feels like we're gonna get in our own way, although noise is definitely a good place to start. What crossed my mind with all of our tools that we can use, walls and berms and vegetation. Whose responsibility does it become then for that vegetation? Because Springfield saw a lot of trees come down in the last, couple of years. So if I'm an industrial site and I plant some trees and they grow up and we have another weather event and those trees come down, now I'm not in compliance, right? And so I don't know that we want to write the code in such a way that it says, yeah, you need to maintain vegetation, when in good faith, a business can do that. And then it takes an ice storm and you lose your 10 trees and compliance. And that's not something you can replace overnight. So I think about how we implement that in a way that is manageable and doable, because, again, as we've experienced recently, there's a lot of trees that we no longer have, and new trees take decades to really have that same effect. So I'm all for us focusing on noise. I just want us to focus on it in a way that's manageable and sustainable. And in the same token, still makes it have the same community feel. So like walls might not be the only answer, right? So, if the industrial site has this big concrete wall, that might not have the feel we're looking for areas. So I'm kind of struggling with how do we do this in a way that makes it still feel like a community, reduces the noise, but kind of in line with Councilor Rodley in the most flexible way possible that's manageable.
Yeah, I think it's important too, to highlight here that it's different. The proposal is a little different depending on the area, right? So for the mixed use districts, that second bullet there, the parking, garbage, recycling areas, ground mounted equipment will be screened, no garbage recycling areas in the front yard setback, and then the 50 decibel noise. Those are actually existing standards. They exist in our code right now. I did not add them. So again, it's just a matter of, if you rezone to mixed use employment, these are the standards that would apply. These are the standards that would apply in the Booth Kelly mixed use area. These are the standards that would apply in the LMI mixed use CC district, where they don't now, essentially. So you're just you're covering it, you're just making sure, is this what you want? And then you also have to think about if you're down Main Street, right, with the second option, it doesn't have the same option as the first one. That's where you have that 20-foot setback from industrial. So if you've got all this industrial and you have some of these tiny sites, but you want that 20-foot setback and that wall to buffer you from that industrial site, or are you saying, I don't need any landscaping, I don't want any buffer, it's okay, and I'm going to allow that housing there and acknowledge that there could be some concerns, there could be some noise. But this is where we can allow housing now, where we don't currently. So different options, basically, depending on the area and location use.
Go ahead, Counselor Stowe.
This is really more technical, but not to exceed 50 decibels, but we have to be really specific about, are we talking, averages? Are we talking instantaneous? Because a gunshot's gonna exceed 50 decibels, but then the average of all the car noise, it's actually gonna have more damage than the same. Anyway, that's all I'm trying to add on to that. And generally, I'm aligned with Councilor Rodley and Councilor.
I think I'm aligned with Counselor Rodley and Counselor Buck as well. So I think there's two parts to this, and knowing that we got to get to the other room because we're gonna have, it's library.
Want to make her come back again.
Oh, she may have to come back again.
I'd welcome it. I mean, I welcome the ongoing conversation.
It's the tension. I think what would help us is is if you could, and maybe we can get it done with a memo. Because the thing where I'm having trouble following along is like, what is the code today? And what are you asking? And what are you asking us to change? And even if it's just a graph that says, here's what you allow today, say yes to this. And here's what we're actually asking for from a change perspective. Just getting in that, just one simple graphic, I think is gonna help clear our head, ahead a lot. And it sounds like we're down to maybe 3 total questions left. Which is this question around noise, right? And then was question 9C. And then maybe we can get this done in about another half an hour, but like, we're gonna have a room full of kiddos here in a second. This is all really great stuff. I thought the research was really interesting, but getting this question around noise right is gonna save a future council a lot of headaches. All right, thank you very much. We're adjourned. I'm going to call the Springfield City Council regular meeting to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Weber.
Here.
Councilor Mo.
Here.
Councilor Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Buck.
Here.
And Councilor Stout.
Here, thank you.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. We're 2 times designated for public testimony this evening under public hearings and business from the audience. If you are attending in person, please complete the request a card located in front of the council chambers and turn them into the city recorder. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer, please, and wish to speak at either of those times, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in person in the council chambers, and then anybody who has raised their virtual hand. First item, please.
Mayor, the first item is Springfield Upbeat. Item number 1 is the 45th Annual Springfield Public Library Bookmark Contest winners. And Abigail Craig is here for this item.
Maybe give us some instructions. There's a lot of people that were like, thank goodness this is the first item.
We've given instructions. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be as quick as I can with you. This year, nearly 1,800 students from Springfield in grades kindergarten through 12th grade entered this bookmark contest with their eye-catching and creative bookmark artwork. All their designs were about reading, libraries, or the theme for this coming summer's summer reading program, which is Plant a Seed, Read. And they'll be up on display. Every single bookmark made, almost 1,800, will be in the youth gallery in the hall, We've gotten support from the Springfield Arts Commission to print the bookmarks and to hang them in their youth gallery in March. But tonight we're presenting all the winners, and they've had their bookmarks printed, and we'll have them available in the library all year long. So we're really excited with our 21 winners.
Well, before we call them down, and we're going to stack people in this well, I have heard it from a couple of counselors that we haven't seen our pile of new bookmarks in. Okay.
They're
Okay.
here, and there's a little secret because there's some city bookmarks this year, city staff.
Shh.
You take it here from me.
As we get started, this is something that's super exciting to the council. This is something we look forward to every single year. You can see the immediate question that people had is like, where's our stack of bookmarks? Because this fills our books all year round. So we're so excited to have you here tonight. And then I'm going to come down and we'll welcome people in.
So when I read your name, if you're here, you can bring your big bookmark up and you can say hello to Mayor Van Gordon. And then we're going to line everyone up in a row from youngest to oldest.
So I'm on one end.
Usually I think you're on, yeah, you're going to be way down there. I'm not sure. Am I going to be next? Which side of you I'm going to be on, but we'll work that out. Okay. I'd like to call up Blair Mesker, a kindergartner from Walterville Elementary. And we're just going to keep going. And Elena Gamaris, who's a first grader from Walterville Elementary. Keep coming this way. And then we're going to have Hanson Alvarado, a first grader from Walterville Elementary. They have a lot of artists. We have Jasper Davis, a first grader from Douglas Gardens Elementary. Not here at this point, but Sarah Blair, second grader from Ridgeview Elementary. Chell Jacobson, a third grader from Guiley Elementary. Ophelia Goodman, a third grader from Thurston Elementary. Sage Barr, a fourth grader from Walterville Elementary, who also won last year. Missing tonight is Gideon DeLeon Herrero, a fourth grader from Yolanda Elementary, but we have a stand-in with the phrase. Say the phrase.
I believe the phrase is read your buns off.
And the hot dog. We have Evelyn Slager, fourth grader from Maple Elementary. Amora Bradley Sandoval, a fourth grader from Guiley Elementary. Not here tonight yet is Alaya Barnett, a fifth grader from Maple Elementary. That's her bookmark up there. Kaylin Cole, fifth grader from Douglas Gardens Elementary, who also won last year. Roxy Miller, a fifth grader from Centennial Elementary. Emma Savalent, the fifth grader from Eugene Christian School, whose brother won last year. Family affair. Ariana Landa, a seventh grader from Thurston Middle School. Oh, I missed one. Taryn McCauley, eighth grader from Thurston Middle School. Jacob Campbell, an 11th grader from Springfield High School. Did I do your other one? Who is it? I read that one. And then I forgot one, Lyra Stiegel, a second grader from Yolanda Elementary. Yeah. I'm not reading everyone's names. Oh my goodness. Axel Contreras Cartas, second grader from Two Rivers Dos Rios Elementary. I did a jump. And Quinn Walp, third grader from Ridgeview Elementary. I didn't read them in correct order. I've been away all weekend. And I want to give a big thanks to all the, there's principals here and librarians from schools and all the people who helped to make this happen. So thank you so much, everyone, and congratulations.
But we're gonna follow some instructions first. We may need to, I just like, I need some smaller ones in front.
Kindergartners, first graders, come be in the front. I'm gonna go to that one. Be right here, by the mayor. You guys stand right by the mayor.
Perfect.
I forget people.
We gotta get Scooch a lot closer.
I got it. Oh, let's switch in. Do you wanna?
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, congratulations.
No.
Well, I'll let you know the secret. I didn't know what, and I think they're really going. They were pretty lucky. I did. I know, it's breaking news.
Can't we vote mayor and a artist? Job.
Good.
Job.
Fun.
You cannot be both mayor and established. You step your cap.
More than welcome to stay or exit for the rest of your evening. We are not expecting anybody to stay. Thank you so much for coming. We are really excited to have seen your bookmarks.
Also, staff would like to know how many cards you have.
Lot.
Good job. Thank you. Congratulations. Maybe we'll see you again next year.
Yeah. So what I can say, can you just pick up the word? 5. Yeah. Don't do not raise issues to yourself. No, if you say you're gonna pick them up, that's gonna be like 15 minutes late. That's why I'm telling her to do it out. All right, I think we're ready. Could you call the next item, please?
Yes, Mayor, not quite as exciting, but the next item is the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
I will second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Audley,
Yes.
Counselor Buck,
Yes.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearings. You have one public hearing this evening, a consideration of alternative contracting method for the Springfield Depot. Ali Camp is here for this item. Do have 2.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ali Camp. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the city. Thanks for having me tonight. Tonight, staff are asking the council to hold a public hearing to consider an alternative contracting method, the design-build method, for deferred exterior maintenance on the historic Springfield Depot and rail car. The design-build method is beneficial for this project. It offers integrated delivery between the historic review land use decision and the contracting solutions for the structure, timeliness with the building remaining occupied, value engineering and material selection, and cost savings with process, communication, and coordination efficiencies. The council briefing memorandum in your packet describes the proposed exterior maintenance scope of work, and you were first introduced to this project scope and suitability of this contracting method at a work session on January 12th. A resolution is included for the council's consideration tonight in your packet. Exhibit A of that resolution explains the legal applicability of the depot's project scope for this alternative contracting method. Should the hearing proceed and resolution be approved, the next steps are to prepare and release a request for proposals for design build services. The contract, once selected, would return to council for award and decision.
Is there any questions? All right, I'm going to go and open the public hearing. I have 5 cards, so I will call 2 at a time, and then we'll go from one person to the next. First person is John Thomas, and then the next person is Gary Schweiger. Come on up, John. And Gary, there's 2 microphones. You're going to hit the microphone until it goes green, and then you'll have 3 minutes. John, could you hit the button on the bottom? There you go. You are live.
My name is John Thomas. I was raised in Springfield. I think the only person that has more history in Springfield is Councilor Moe. Mine goes back to 1951. Been past president of the Springfield Chamber of Commerce, past first citizen, and was chairing the Downtown Citizen Advisory Committee, which first met in 2009, and Councilor Moe was also a party to that discussion. This was before the Main Street revitalization, which was pretty remarkable in terms of what's happened down in Main Street. My testimony tonight is to address the RFP process as it would pertain to the rail car behind the Chamber Depot office. In 1988, this car was given to the city by Alvin Reed, who owned Reed's Fuel and Trucking. Doc Boyles, owner of substantial property in the Industrial Way area, helped move the car to its present location, which is right behind the depot. Over the years, the car was neglected and had serious issues of deferred maintenance. Observing this, several past presidents and former chamber members organized a rail car restoration committee as a 501c3 entity. Several $1,000s of direct financial aid and in-kind contributions were received, which allowed for power washing, rust removal, repainting, and restoring the interior electrical system. The interior of the car was full of excess furniture, wood scraps, metal, and the door was inoperable due to warping and twisted metal. The interior is now open with a temporary door. The last item we need to address is the windows. The frames have rotted, and significant environmental damage is occurring due to the weather. We do have a vendor who will respond to the RFP if this depot restoration is approved. This individual has all the original specifications, as the car is on the historical registry and is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, structure in Springfield as classified. Our hope is to continue this maintenance, as we think it can serve as an important asset for future tourism and can complement the Springfield Museum for additional exhibit space. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
My name is Gary Schweiger. I'm from Eugene, Oregon. My address is 3345 South Lambert Street. Mayor Van Gordon, councilors, staff. I'm here to support the action of the city council and the staff to exempt the contract to perform preferred maintenance on the Springfield Depot and Southern Pacific Rail Car number 28170 from the competitive bidding requirements to utilize the request for proposal process. I'm a member of the Willamette Cascade Model Railroad Club, and thanks to Vonnie Mickelson and the Springfield Chamber of Commerce, we use the freight room at the depot for our monthly meetings of about 73 members. The depot is a building that is on the National Register of Historic Places, and Southern Pacific Rail Car is in the Washburn Historical Landmark Overlay District. This is a very attractive entry point. I would say that a number of cities would love to have something like this in as they come into the city to make sure that they understand what the city is all about. And I think it's very important to have an attractive entry point. By using the alternative bidding approach, special care can be taken in the deferred maintenance of the structure and rail car. I agree with the council briefing memorandum and the proposed resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next 2 cards are Alan Sirotek and Walt Mulford.
I'm Walt Mulford. I live in Eugene, 3836 Souza Street. The reason I'm here is I'm also a member of the Willamette Cascade Model Railroad Club and serve as their president right now. One of the things that is important to the Model Railroad Club is the Springfield Depot. We, many years ago, when it was moved to the site that it is, we had donated $15,000, the club did, to help get it moved. And graciously, after several years of meeting in other places, excuse me, Bonnie Mickelson is allowing us to meet there for our monthly meetings, as Gary told you. I too agree with the doing the preferred or the deferred maintenance on the railroad car and the depot. Both are, I think, have historical value to the city, and they certainly have a lot of interest to folks in the city, as it really represents what part of what Springfield is, the railroad coming through and helping build the city. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Alan Zertek. I'm from Springfield. I've been born and raised in Springfield, and I live at Cedar Flat Road at Springfield. I've been part of the Willamette Cascade Model Railroad Club, and I'm here to help, for the deferred maintenance of the station. And I'm not used to doing this, so thank you guys for if you can help.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Then the next card I have is Joe Leahy.
Just punch the green button.
You are on and live right now.
Okay. Thank you, council and staff, and thank you, chamber and staff, for taking action to undertake the deferred maintenance on the Springfield Depot and the railway post office, railway car 28170. The depot is the last remaining depot in Oregon with Queen Anne architecture and 2 stories. It's listed as a city landmark, and it's on the National Registry of Historic Sites. The rail car is within the Washburn Historic Overlay District, abuts the depot, shares the depot deck, the parking lot, and the railroad character of the depot. The rail car is a combination car. It is a railway post office, or RPO, on the west one half, and a baggage compartment on the east one half. The RPO function is specific and special. The letters were delivered to the rail car and postmarked on the car, then sorted and delivered along that route. Springfield was included in this network of RPO routes. RPOs were phased out and ultimately terminated nationally, the last run being June 29, 1977, between New York and Washington. Given the historical status of the depot, the historical character of the rail car, the previous community investment in the depot and the RPO rail car, their proximity to each other, their geographic location, their welcoming entry to downtown, their use as a distinctive visitor center, their use as a gathering place, the need to continue chamber operations during the renovation, the staff recommendation should be implemented. It is entirely appropriate to employ a contract bidding methodology and process which requires not only reliance on price, but also other important factors which are necessary to obtain the best investment for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you state your name and address for the record too?
Joe Leahy, 758 Crest Lane, Springfield, Oregon. Tonight's my birthday.
Happy 65th birthday, Joe.
Thank you.
I have no other cards for this item. It looks like Bonnie Mickelson is raising her hand to speak.
Yes, and Bonnie, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. This is Bonnie Mickelson, President and CEO of the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce. And first and foremost, I want to wish Mr. Joe Leahy happy birthday. And also I want to thank all of those who came out this evening to City Council chambers to express their support for this project and the investment that the City Council is looking at making in a place of pride and history for Springfield. So I'd also like to express the Springfield Chamber support and understanding that since it was mentioned, the building, the depot was moved, if we can all imagine that moment in time when the building was deemed so important enough to Springfield back in the late 1980s to move it several blocks and completely restore it to its original glory. The Springfield Chamber is called the depot its home, and this is due to a strong partnership and collaboration with the city of Springfield. So I would say with the chamber's interior renovations that we completed back in 2022 that made the space, brought the space back to life and made it attractive to host all kinds of community gatherings, meetings, workshops for businesses, student mock interviews, and of course, the wonderful folks of the Willamette Cascade Model Railroad Club who bring fun, enthusiasm, and an incredibly strong stewardship of that space and the history, and of course, what that building will be. I love the drop-ins that we have. I love hosting community organizations. I love it when people pass by and say, or drop in and say, I've driven by this building for years and years. I've lived here forever and I have never stopped in. It's exciting to be inside and be able to see it. Just imagine how stunning the improvement and the improvement to that asset into the gateway of downtown Springfield will be with the dollars that are being considered for this reinvestment. And so with that, I want to thank everyone once again, who came out. I want to express my gratitude for city personnel who worked to get this in front of you, and the council and the mayor for your consideration and understanding the value of the investment that I believe truly, having sat in the seat inside that chamber for years, and seen the eyes light up for the kids to the elder adults, that it'll be enjoyed for generations to come. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to express our support, and we'll see you at the depot sometime soon.
All right, thank you very much. Neil, are there any more hands?
No other hands for this item.
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Unless people have discussion items. No.
Okay. I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the use of alternative contracting method of design build and an exemption to competitive bidding requirements pursuant to ORS 279C.3352 and Springfield Municipal Code 2.7093A.
Second.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Councilor Weber.
Yes.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Buck.
Yes.
And Councilor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
You have a second public hearing. It's the fiscal year 26 supplemental budget number 2, and Jessica Mummy is here for this item.
Is this award-winning Jessica Mummy?
I wish. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessica Mummy. I'm the city's Deputy Finance Director here this evening for a public hearing on supplemental budget number 2. At various times during the fiscal year, finance staff come before council to request adjustments to our annual budget. These changes are planned activities to recognize new revenue or to make other required changes. These adjustments to resources and requirements change the current budget and are processed through supplemental budget requests that are scheduled by the Finance Department. This is the second of 3 scheduled supplemental budgets to come before you this fiscal year. I wanted to very quickly highlight some key activity in this supplemental budget. One of those is to increase Finance Department operating expenditures by about $16,000 to support the Springfield Municipal Court becoming a court of record. Also, we are requesting to increase the fire department operating budget by $166,000. This is offset by revenue that was received by our fire department as they responded to the 2025 wildfires in California and the Los Angeles area. We're also requesting that the police department operating budget be increased by $116,000. This is offset by grant revenue from the state of Oregon, and this is for the jail-based medications for opioid use disorders program. And finally, this supplemental budget implements a temporary reduction in street fund expenditures by nearly $500,000 to align with current revenue predictions. This is a prudent and proactive temporary adjustment to street fund spending in response to near-term revenue variability. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Are there any questions? All right. Councilor Buck.
Again, this may be a little bit of a larger question, but with the street, with the reduction, what limitations are we going to have in terms of maintenance and repair? What's that gonna look like and feel like to community members?
Right now, we are just taking the proactive step to reduce the expenditures so that our operations department and community development department do not spend the money in fiscal year 26, while ongoing discussions with the city manager and I believe ultimately council will be taking place in the near future. So right now, we're just halting their ability to expend that money while further discussions are taking place.
Councilor Weber.
Oh, I'm ready to
Oh,
read this.
I still have to open the hearing. And Councilor Buck, I think one of the big challenges we can continue to have with streets is not necessarily capital outlay, right? Because we've been fairly successful and the voters have been very generous with making sure that we have the money to really rebuild streets. It's this question about operations and maintenance that continues to be challenging statewide. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. I have no cards for this item. Neil, do you have anybody online?
No hands for this item.
I close the public hearing. Now we're ready.
I move to adopt a resolution adjusting resources and requirements in the following funds: general, street, special revenue, building code, fire local option levy, street capital, ambulance, vehicle and equipment, and SDC administration.
Second.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Councilor Weber.
Yes.
Councilor Mo.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Buck.
Yes.
And Councilor Stout.
Yes.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Business from the audience.
I have no cards for business from the audience. Do you have any hands online?
No hands for this item.
Next item, please.
Any business from the city council?
Councilor Rodley.
Thank you. I gave the mayor a heads up because I actually wrote some notes because I had a few things that bubbled up over the past week that I want to make sure I said. So first, I want to thank all the people and the businesses who participated in Friday's general strike in Springfield, in all the different meaningful ways that people came out and made their voices heard and participated in community. I also want to do a special call out to all the officers of our Springfield Police Department who have been providing extra support, mutual aid, de-escalation, and backup for the many events and activities that have been happening in Springfield and in our neighboring communities. A lot of these are just bubbling up sort of organically, and our officers of Springfield Police Department have been amazing in terms of just being out there supporting the community. I also want to call out, I know it's been a week or so, but all of the Springfield volunteers who participated in the historically long activation of the Egan Warming Center during the recent cold spell. And I also want to appreciate all of the Ward 3 neighbors who have reached out to me to share feedback and concerns around the new location at Centennial and Mohawk. This was a
Testimony notes.
a new year, and it impacted the community in different ways. And I just want to thank everybody who was out there in all the ways to support that. And finally, and this isn't something that we often do here in Springfield, so I'm gonna give it a run. I have a possible work area that I'd like to propose if my council colleagues are amenable. And I know that in my time in this role, that I just sort of know and feel anecdotally that the city of Springfield prioritizes local businesses when we make purchases and procurement. We talk about it, but what I do not know is if we have a clear policy and guidance around it. And I also know that there are laws and there are regulations around purchasing and procurement that we must follow. But what I'd really like to explore is how to expressly support prioritizing local businesses and divesting from spending public dollars with national or international companies who may be supporting or investing in programs and activities that are hurting Springfield residents. This request is not as much about politics as it is about being very intentional and letting our Springfield values of community and belonging. And I was very moved at the State of the City that was something the mayor called out, is how do we create a city and a community where people feel like they belong? And how do we spend public resources intentionally? So with my colleagues' support and agreement, I just want to ask the staff to provide information, because I can't give people things to do without everybody saying this is something we also want to work on. Because I would like to know more about our current processes and policies. And I suspect we are already doing so much of this. We just aren't necessarily telling the story of how we're doing it, or the specific policies of how we evaluate and how we support local businesses. So I'd really love to kind of lean in and see if we can strengthen and expand and support the policy to make sure we're aligning our purchasing and procurement with supporting our communities.
Nancy? So could you help us with maybe some additional information before we start giving out, work directions?
I can absolutely do that. I think, we do make a lot of effort to support our local businesses whenever possible here in Springfield. I'll give one tangible example that happened recently, which was the mayor's State of the City address, using local musicians, local vendors, the local florists to make that happen. That's a singular event that we use a lot of Springfield business to support us for. With respect to public purchasing, we do have a lot of laws and requirements about that, so that, we can, other elected bodies can make policy, but you have to look for the unintended consequences. And one of the public procurement laws is to make sure that that procurement can be competitive to everybody. So that's something that I can talk with help with the city attorney. And we can come back to you probably with a briefing memorandum as a starting point.
Yeah, I think a briefing memorandum would be appropriate, just to give everybody the same information and then give an opportunity for folks to decide if they want to do additional work. All right.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay. So State of the City last week. Really, happy, and I was really happy with how it turned out. The turnout from the public and the reception to the message for all the hard work that is being done in Springfield. This is my opportunity to say a couple of things. One of them is just again, say thank you to the staff for doing a significant amount of work. We could not do this as a city without you. And also, just to recognize a couple of the staff members who worked so hard on this, Elise, Laura Lynn, Mike, who really put this together and made a lot of the programming behind the scenes work out in a spectacular and a professional way that allowed the city to put their right foot ahead. And in particular, right, Elise, I could not have done this without you. And I'm really grateful for all the support that you provided. And I will give people one example. People are talking about that last slide, right? Which is, was a stunning picture of everything that we'd done last year. And that was a conversation that went through about 3 iterations. And I think the first time I said, how about this? Elise said, I don't know. And she worked diligently and turned what was an idea of mine into a vision, into something that really represents this community really well. So I'm really grateful for the work, Elise. Anybody else? All right. Next item, please.
Any business from the city manager?
One quick thing. I also want to talk about state of the city. It seems like the topic du jour. I want to thank the mayor and council for your leadership and your participation in 2025. I always look forward to State of the City because it's a look back on just how much work we did. We go so fast and we have so much, and you are all volunteers. And just taking a moment to really appreciate the work that you've done and the leadership you've shown, plus the countless hours that you've given to this community is really important. I really appreciated the theme and the tone of our State of the City. I felt like it really emphasized how Springfield is truly special in how we foster community, how we embrace our differences, and we use those differences to bind us together. A real message of belonging, and also a clear vision from the mayor of one that's positive, one where we want to have, the children that are here stay in the community or come back to the community, and the people to be able to age in their homes, and all of those wonderful things that you want as part of a thriving community. So I thought it was a wonderful event, and I just really appreciate the work of all of the staff that was involved to make that happen, and hosting that in the Wildish Theater, which is such a great asset to our downtown. I would be remiss to not mention that. So thank you, Mayor and Council.
Any business from the city attorney?
No business, thank you.
All right, that is our last item. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.